NASCAR suspended Bubba Wallace for the upcoming race at Homestead Miami Speedway, and Spire Motorsports has announced their 2023 crew chief and driver lineup. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We've got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsport stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to start paint schemes and sponsorship news first. Let's jump into those really quickly. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Brad Keselowski's 2023 manufacturing technology scheme that are going to be seen next year at the Chicago Street Course. Really awesome looking paint scheme, in my opinion. I love the red, white, and blue. I also love the black touch on it. It looks really awesome. I'm excited to see it on the racetrack in 2023. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s 2022 Kroger and Slim Jim scheme. They're going to be seen this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. This paint scheme's okay in my opinion. It's a little bit plain. It's a little bit all over the place in some senses, but it's decent. Hopefully Ricky will have a good run in this car this weekend. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Austin Dillon's 2022 Huck scheme that we're going to be seeing this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Gives you those Miami Vice vibes. It looks really great in my opinion. Love the colors on it, and it's a really good looking scheme in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Brendan Poole's 2022 Fantic scheme that we're going to be seeing this weekend in the Truck Series race at Homestead Miami Speedway. Scheme's okay in my opinion. It's probably my favorite glory to God scheme I've seen ever, but it really isn't the greatest scheme. Hopefully he'll have a good run though in this truck this weekend at Homestead. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Roush Chastain's 2022 Kubota Onyx scheme that are going to be seen this weekend at Homestead. Great look at paint scheme, in my opinion. Kyle Sykes has always done a really good job designing paint schemes. Looks good. Excited to see on the racetrack at Homestead. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Julie Lander's 2022 ATEM scheme that are going to be seen in the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Homestead Miami Speedway. This scheme's okay in my opinion. It's not the best scheme I've seen, but hopefully Julie Lander can have a good run in this car. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Sheldon Creed's 2022 Watt Wheeling scheme that are going to be seen this weekend at Homestead. Love they're changing the wheeling scheme up just a little bit. Love they're kind of having a little more of a gold color and a yellow color on the scheme compared to what they've usually done, which is a red and white scheme. I think this looks okay. It looks pretty good in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Cole Custer's 2022 Dixie Vodka scheme that are going to be seen this weekend at Homestead. Love her changing up the Dixie Vodka scheme. Kind of have those Miami Vice looking colors. I think it looks really awesome. It just looks really good. Love the colors on it. It's an awesome looking paint scheme, and I'm excited to see on the racetrack this weekend at Homestead. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ross Chastain's 2023 Kubota scheme that we're going to be seeing next year in 2023. This looks absolutely amazing. Love it. It's a little bit different than the 2022 one they've got, but I love that Kubota is stepping up and joining the company of Trackhouse next year. Great to see a Trackhouse has great sponsorship heading into 2023, and excited to see this car next year. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is John Hunter Nemechek's 2022 Gear Wrench scheme that we're going to be seeing this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. This scheme looks absolutely pretty much similar to Kevin Harvick's scheme, except the only difference is the manufacturer and that it's a truck. This looks great though, in my opinion. I think that KBM's had some good paint schemes. This one's no exception, and it looks great in my opinion. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Parker Kligerman's 2022 Food Country USA Spooky scheme that will be seen, I believe, this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Sad to see that Parker Kligerman is getting back behind the wheel of the truck. I think this could be his last start of the 2022 season. I'm not sure if he'll be running next in a couple weekends at Phoenix because this is the second to last race for the Truck Series. Hopefully Parker, though, can have a really good run in the truck. I'm excited to see what he can do, and I think he'll be definitely a threat to win this weekend. Homestead, excited to see him back on the wheel, and it's a good-looking truck. In my honest opinion, looks really good in my opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Dylan Bassett. As Dylan Bassett is going to drive a 77 for Bassett Racing this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. This will be the first time that Bassett Racing has entered the NASCAR Xfinity Series for quite some time. Hopefully Dylan can make the field. I think there's some cars that will be going home in the Xfinity Series race. So hopefully Dylan can make the field this weekend and have a good run in the Bassett car this weekend at Homestead and can make the show. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Nick Lights. As Nick Lights is going to drive the 33 for Ram Brothers Racing this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. I believe this will be Nick Lights' third attempt in the NASCAR Camp World Truck Series. He's made 2 starts so far in his career, and he's had some not-so-great performances. He'll have to qualify his way into the event as one truck will go home this weekend at Homestead. Hoping Nick Lights can make the show and have a good run in the truck in the 33. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Stephen Parsons. As Stephen Parsons is going to drive the 20 for Young's Motorsports this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Excited to see if Stephen's getting back in the NASCAR Camp World Truck Series. I think I don't know how many starts he's had in the Truck Series in the past. This could be his Truck Series debut, but I'm not really sure. But I'm excited to see if Stephen's getting another opportunity, and hopefully Stephen will be able to make the show and do really good in the 20 truck this weekend at Homestead. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Max Gutierrez. As Max Gutierrez will drive the 22 for AM Racing this weekend at Homestead. This will be Max's third or fourth attempt in the NASCAR Camp World Truck Series. He's driven all those for AM Racing, whether it's the 37 or the 22 truck, and he's been kind of impressive in the 22 truck. I think Max has got a chance for top 20 for sure this weekend, because that truck will be able to make the show. I think it'll be really, really fast, and I'm excited to see that Max Gutierrez will be driving the 22. I expect him to do pretty good this weekend at Homestead. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Parker Retzlaff. As Parker Retzlaff is going to drive the 02 for Our Motorsports this weekend at Homestead. This will be the third or fourth race that he's driven for Our Motorsports this year. I think there's a good possibility he'll be driving full-time for them in 2023. Parker's a very talented driver, and he's a driver that doesn't have a lot of experience, but I think he's done really stellar, really, really good, and I'm excited to see that he'll be back behind the wheel of a 02 car this weekend at Homestead. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Brennan Poole. As Brennan Poole is going to drive the 6th car for JD Motorsports this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Brennan Poole, very talented driver. Of course, will be driving also the 46 truck for Glory to God Racing this weekend. I'm expecting Brennan Poole to do pretty good in this car. He's done solid when he's driven for some of the smaller and underperforming organizations. I think he'll do really good this weekend, and excited to see that Brennan Poole will be driving the 6 car for JD. I think he's got a good shot to do really good. I'm excited to see that he'll be back behind the wheel and have a chance to run really good and competitive. I'm excited to see him back behind the wheel for JD Motorsports this weekend at Homestead. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Lane Riggs. As Lane Riggs is going to drive the 62 for Halmer Friesen Racing in the season finale for the Truck Series at Phoenix International Raceway. Lane Riggs made a couple select starts in the Camp World Truck Series here with Halmer Friesen Racing, and I think he's been really, really good. Got a top 10 in his debut, and I think he had a chance for a top 10 finish, I think, in Richmond as well. So it's been a little bit for him to have an opportunity, but I definitely am excited to see if Lane Riggs is getting another opportunity to drive this car. I think Lane Riggs is a very good and a very, very solid driver, and I think he'll have a chance for a top 10. I think that Halmer Friesen's got fast trucks, and I think this truck will be able to for sure make the show at Phoenix. I think it'll be very, very competitive, and I'm very excited to see that Lane Riggs is getting another opportunity to race in the Truck Series with Halmer Friesen Racing. Really exciting for sure. I'm glad to see he's getting an opportunity to race in the 62 truck this year. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Nick Sanchez. As it was just announced yesterday that Nick Sanchez is going to finish the 2022 NASCAR Xfinity Series season. That means that Nick Sanchez will be running at Homestead, Martinsville, and Phoenix, and he'll drive the 48 for Big Machine Racing in the rest of the season. This is not a surprise to me. Nick Sanchez, in the select starts that I've seen him run this year, I think he's done a really good job. Of course, the 2022 ARCA champion. There's a lot of conversation behind the scenes that he could be going to KBM full-time next year. Hasn't been confirmed, but a lot of indications are he'll be running at trucks next year. But I would love for him to be a contender to drive full-time in Xfinity, because I think he's done really good with Big Machine Racing. So this isn't a big surprise or a big shock to me that he is going to be driving this car for the rest of the year. I think he's done a really good and a really awesome job, and I'm very excited to see that he'll be getting an opportunity to drive full the rest of the year with Big Machine. He's done a really good and an awesome job, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Keelan Harvick. Now, while Kevin Harvick was competing in the Cup Series race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, where I think he ended up scoring a top 10 finish, Keelan Harvick was racing in the 2022 IAME World Finals. Keelan Harvick competed in a bunch of heats. He ended up was fast, started P2 in the finals, ended up finishing P5, and was really fast in the preliminary heats. He actually competed against 91 different drivers, and went on to win in one of his preliminary heats, and also finished P5 overall. It's awesome to see that Keelan Harvick is going out there and racing in there. He's been actually really interested, maybe wanting to go to Formula 1, but it's very unlikely that an American driver could probably race in Formula 1 at this this particular point. But it's really awesome to see that Keelan Harvick is representing the United States racing over there in basic cars. I think it's really awesome to see. Really, really exciting for sure. And congratulations to Keelan Harvick on having a really impressive run and finishing P5 in IAME. Really excited to see, in my opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Freightliner Legends Cup. Now, for the upcoming Mexico Grand Prix that's going to be coming up here in the not-so-distant future, I think that's going to be happening in a few weeks. There is going to be a support race that is going to be happening with some of the legends from the kart and IndyCar as well. The drivers that will be included are Paul Tracy, Casey Mears, Alex Tagliani, Max Papix, Mark Blundell, Oriol Serbia, and Adrian Fernandez will be among the drivers that will be competing in that. I would expect some other legends, maybe like a Sebastian Bourdais, would probably be among those drivers that also race in his Freightliner Legends Cup. This is really, really cool to see, and I think it's going to be worth the admission. Some of these guys have been racing as of recently. Of course, Alex Tagliani, of course, races currently so far in the Canadian Tire Series, based in the Penny Series. You've got some of these other guys who've raced as of recently, and I think this is a really cool thing that they are doing, bringing some of the legends of racing back and racing the Freightliner Legends Cup. I think it's really exciting for sure, and it's going to be a really good touch and awesome to see that this is a new event they're doing. It's really cool to see, and glad to see a bunch of legends are going to be back. It is really exciting for sure, in my opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Marco Andretti. As it was announced on Monday afternoon, that Marco Andretti is officially going to be racing in the 2023 Indianapolis 500, once again driving the number 98 for Andretti Autosport. Basically, everything is the same, including the sponsor. And this has been expected. Marco Andretti always runs Indy 500, let's be honest. Marco Andretti always attempts to run the Indy 500. This is the only race I believe he is going to be running in 2023 for IndyCar, as there's a lot of talk he could also be looking maybe come over and race in NASCAR as well at some point next season, and probably also be racing in the SRX as well. Marco will be very, very competitive. Marco always seems to be competitive in the Indy 500 every single year. Again, I'm not shocked or surprised that Marco will be racing in the 2023 Indianapolis 500. He always attempts to run the Indy 500, and again, it's not a major surprise or a major shock to me that he will be racing in the Indy 500 again in 2023. It's good to see. He'll probably have to make the field, but it's really good to see that he's getting another opportunity to race in the Indy 500 once again in 2023. Really excited to see for sure, in my opinion. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Mark Martin. Now, Mark Martin was on social media in the last couple of days, and Mark Martin was not very happy on social media when it came to Jack Roush. Mark Martin basically says that he wishes he would have seen Jack Roush or someone from RFK this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Then he went on to say, I love Jack Roush with my whole heart, and it would have been really cool to see Jack, but he really wished he would have seen him. Mark Martin, you can tell, was not very happy. He saw a lot of drivers, guys like Ty Gibbs. He saw other guys in the Cup Series and other legends of sport. But Mark Martin not seeing his old owner, that's kind of unacceptable in my honest opinion. Now, Kevin Woods, who basically is, I think, one of the general managers at RFK, basically said that's on me. That's my apologies. Now, it could have been a situation when it came to sponsors, because Valvoline is technically a Hendrick sponsor. And, of course, they have Cash on the car for RFK, so that could have played a major factor in there. But apparently Jack Roush was spotted at the racetrack, so I'm a little bit surprised that Jack Roush didn't go and see Mark Martin. But we know that Jack Roush historically has not been the greatest with people that have worked with him in the past. So this isn't the biggest surprise or shock to me that Jack Roush is probably not the easiest guy to work with. But it would have been cool for Jack Roush to go see Mark Martin, you know, the guy who brought Roush Racing basically up to the top. It would have been really exciting to see. It's kind of disappointing that this kind of went down. I don't blame Mark Martin for being upset about it. He's got every right to be frustrated about this because, again, Mark Martin really brought Jack Roush and Keselowski really up in air and helped them contend for championships and helped them have a shot at winning championships as well. I think it's really disappointing to see, but again, it's not a major shock or surprise that this went down. I don't think anybody's surprised that Jack Roush is like this, considering the fact that Jack Roush historically has been kind of like this throughout his career. Again, it's very disappointing to see, but it's not a major surprise to see, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, is we're going to talk about some other penalties that were announced, especially the Bubba Wallace penalty we'll talk about later, but there are some other penalties that were announced this past weekend. So Ben Bayshore, who is the crew chief for Kyle Busch, has been suspended for 4 races due to the wheel coming off of the car at Las Vegas. That means Ben Bayshore will not finish crew chief for Kyle Busch, as Kyle Busch will not be there after the season. Ben Bayshore is done crew chief for Kyle Busch, as Kyle Busch will leave to go to Roush Racing. Ben Bayshore will be suspended due to the wheel coming off. Mark Zetzer, who is also the crew chief for Jeremy Clements Racing, due to having body modifications on the car before the race, he has been suspended for 1 race as well. These are some of the penalties that just happened this weekend that kind of are important. Seth Chaka will be the crew chief for Kyle Busch for the next 4 weeks. Well, for the next 3 weeks, technically, because Kyle Busch, like I said, will be leaving to go to Roush Racing. But it's really so disappointing when it happened to see Ben Bayshore leave. But honestly, I think Kyle Busch is going to be very happy that Ben Bayshore ain't working with him anymore. And that's happened, and that's when it comes to the penalties right there. And those are the penalties from this past weekend that aren't the Bubba Wallace penalty that we are going to be talking about here in the not-so-distant future. That's about to come up here later in this episode. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, is we're going to talk about the Las Vegas TV ratings from this past weekend. So, according to Adam Stern, NBC earned a 1.57 rating and 2.619 million viewers for the South Point 400 at Las Vegas. That is up from a 1.21 rating and 2.095 million viewers. But that race was on NBCSN. Even though it was moved over to NBC, it still would have been up in the TV ratings. So regardless of it, it's good to see that we've had a ratings increase from last year for the first time in the playoffs. Yes, it was moved from NBCSN, but it really is good to see that people are coming in and tuning into the race. And 2.619 billion viewers still, it's not the greatest number for a playoff race, don't get me wrong. But for it to be the first playoff race to go up this year, because I think the playoffs have really struggled this year, being from NBC to basically going over to NBC, from basically USA coming over to NBC. We've seen huge struggles this year in the TV ratings department. So I'm hoping that this continues going forward, that we can see TV ratings increase for the rest of the year, because we had a great start to the year when it came to the TV ratings, but really they've been kind of struggling overall as the year has gone on. So it is very disappointing to see that the ratings have struggled as much as they have. But it's good to see at least you're kind of starting to end on a more positive note. We've got 3 races to go. I think the earlier start times probably are helping just a little bit. Yes, we're still going up against football, but I think the earlier start times are probably helping just a little bit. And I'm hoping we start having these earlier starts going into 2023 as well. I know later start times have helped in a sense, but I think having earlier start times as well makes a little bit more sense. There will be earlier start times for the rest of the year. Of course, Homestead will be at 1:30 Central Standard Time, 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. The Martinsville race, I believe, is at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. And it's good to see the ratings at least went up for this week, and it's good to see at least we're ending on a much more positive note than a negative note, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Chase Purdy. As it was announced yesterday that Chase Purdy will not be returning to Hattori Racing in 2023 and will not continue driving the 61 truck heading into 2023. No word if Tyler Anker will be returning to the team or not in 2023, but Hattori Racing is still planning to be a 2-car truck operation in 2023. First of all, let's talk about Chase Purdy. Chase Purdy has really, really struggled, in my opinion, in the truck series for the first year since he's come back to return to NASCAR since 2020. The first years of his return, he has really, really struggled. He's only gotten a few top 10s and has really never been a contender. And compared to what the ride was last year when Austin Hill was behind the wheel of Hattori, where they actually, I think, won a couple of races last year, this team has taken a major step back. So the big question is going to be who is going to take over that second truck for Chase Purdy. My big question is who will take over. I think someone from Toyota's development program, maybe like a Corey Heim, there's rumblings he's going to go to DJR next year. Could maybe Buddy Copeland gets an opportunity. Who really knows at this point who's going to take over the truck? I would anticipate that Tyler Ankrum, because he does have sponsorship and funding from some of those companies that he works with, I think Tyler Ankrum does have a very good shot and a very good opportunity to return to his respective ride next year. Now, where's Chase Purdy going to go in 2023? Chase Purdy's got sponsorship and funding, so he will probably find some footing heading into 2023. It's unclear if he'll stay with Toyota or go to different manufacturer. I think there's a chance he does, unfortunately, go to Kyle Busch Motorsports, because Kyle Busch Motorsports needs sponsorship and funding, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the running. I know Nick Sanchez has been in conversations to go to Kyle Busch Motorsports in 2023, but the big question is what's going to happen with Chase Purdy. Where is he going to end up in 2023? That is a big question right now because he has performed really. He has not done good this year. Let's be honest. He has really struggled this year and has not really stepped up and ran really good this year. So he's going to have to figure out and he's going to have to step it up to the plate, especially going into 2023. That being said, wherever he ends up going, it's time for him to step up his performance and figure out what he's going to do. So hopefully he does find some footing for 2023, but it sounds like Purdy, it's unclear where he'll be going next year, but he will not be returning to the team next year, especially with the lack of performance the team has had this year. I think they're trying to figure out what they're going to do and figure out where they're going to be going. Hopefully a good, talented driver can come in there and do really good. Not saying that Purdy isn't talented, but Purdy has been underperforming this year with Hattori in this season. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about rain tires. Now, as reported by Bozy Tatarevic in the Road and Track Tire article, he reports that NASCAR is planning to introduce a wet weathered package for short ovals starting in 2023. Now, those short ovals will not be tracks like Bristol. This will be tracks like Martinsville, New Hampshire, maybe Worldwide Technology Raceway, and also other tracks maybe like Richmond are being considered as wet weather tires. Now, for the record, when it comes to these wet weather tires, this is to speed up the process of drying the racetrack. The plan would be is that these would not be used for standing water. If there's standing water around the racetrack, NASCAR will not go on the track. I think that's a very safe and a really good precaution. The plan would be for if the track is damp and it feels like they can get the track a little bit drier, it can speed up the process of getting racing going. Instead of having to wait maybe an hour and a half, maybe we'd be only waiting about 40 to 45 minutes and maybe 40 minutes into the drying process if the track is basically a little bit more dry. You can bring the wet weather tires out and you can dry the track a little bit faster. It can get racing a little bit quicker as well to speed up the process. This is a really good move in my opinion as well for NASCAR. Also in the cards and the plans, it will have an updated rain light on the back of the car as well. I think where the blinking light is going to be a lot larger as well, so you can be able to see the rain lights a little bit better. I think it's really cool the rain tires and wet weather tires are being implemented. I still think we need to focus on getting the safety of the next-gen car working on, and NASCAR is working on plans to get that set. But we started testing these wet weather tires last year, and it's good to see they're getting moved quicker. I didn't think this would be even a thing in 2023, to be honest. I did not expect wet weather tires to become actually a really big thing. So I think this is really cool. Now, I know people are like, well, they focus on getting the next-gen car, and I think they are working on that behind the scenes. But it's really good to see that they're introducing a wet weather tire package. I think it's exciting to see for sure updated rain tires as well. And it's not for like standing water. We don't want standing water on the racetrack because it can be very dangerous. But I think it's good to see they're bringing a wet weather tire in. I think it's really exciting for sure. I'm glad to see they're having something updated in regards to that heading into the 2023 season. That's pretty cool in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ryan Preece. Now, Ryan Preece currently at the moment is still in the Stewart-Haas Racing Development Program, but according to Dale Jr., Ryan Preece was actually considering an offer from a non-Ford organization in a different NASCAR series from the Xfinity Series and Truck Series. He was considering an opportunity to race in a different manufacturer and a different team for 2023. This is very interesting because Ryan Preece, there's a lot of rumors going on at the moment right now that Ryan Preece might be heading over to drive full-time in the 41 car next year to drive full-time in the Cup Series. But it sounds like he had an offer to go race for another organization. Now, what organizations could he potentially have gone to? First one, maybe Hattori Racing, perhaps. Hattori Racing, of course, we already know that Chase Purdy, he will not be returning to Hattori Racing in 2023. So we know that at this particular point, that he was not going to be returning to Hattori Racing next year. Not Hattori Racing. We knew that Purdy wasn't going to be returning. So maybe Hattori Racing. Maybe Spire Motorsports is maybe in the conversations. But again, it was a different series. So maybe, of course, Spire could have been a team you're looking at maybe for their Truck Series program. But I don't know if that was the case. But it's very interesting to see that Ryan Preece actually did have a legitimate offer because I think a lot of people see Ryan Preece as a very talented driver. Now, I still think there's a very good likely possibility and a chance he's going to potentially drive that 41 next year because let's be honest with ourselves. Cole Custer has struggled in Cup in the 3 years I've seen him race. He struggled. Yes, he does have a win, but he's only got like 11 or 12 career top 10s outside of that win. And again, he has just overall really, really struggled in the select starts that he has had. So I'm not surprised and shocked about this that teams are looking at him. I think a lot of people look at Preece as a driver who really could carry an organization going forward and really can help a team. So it isn't a major shock and a major surprise to me that he was considering other offers from other organizations. But when you look at Ryan Preece, I think it makes a lot of sense for him to stay with Roush Racing because, again, I think he'll either end up in the 41 next year or contend to potentially end up in the 4-car, eventually replacing Kevin Harvick. Or what they could do is move Cole Custer to the 15 for 1 year, keep Preece in there for the 41, and then bring Cole and Custer back to the 41 in 2024 and put Preece in the 4-car. We'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to this because, again, silly season is going to get crazy behind the scenes for all the series in the not-so-distant future. But it's good to see that Preece has an offers from other teams, and it's interesting to see that he had an offer to race in a different series. Very interesting to see for sure, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Josh Berry. As it was announced yesterday that Josh Berry will be returning to Junior Motorsports in 2023 to drive the A car. This is not a major shock or surprise considering that Josh Berry just won the most recent race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway to make the championship 4, and I believe he's won 3 races so far in 2022. He also has got sponsorship funding from multiple companies and multiple different people, and it really helps that Josh Berry's got that sponsorship that's really helping him at the moment. But not to mention, Josh Berry has been really impressive this year and has a really good opportunity and a really good shot to win in a couple weeks at Martinsville. He could also win this weekend as well. And Berry's been performing at a really good level this year. Not as good as a team like Justin Allgaier or Noah Gregson's performed, but he's performed really well this year. This also means that Junior Motorsports is set for 2023. That means that we know that Sam Mayer will be in the 1 car. We know that Brandon Jones will be in the 9 next year. He'll be joining the organization. Justin Allgaier is back in the 7, and Josh Berry will be back in the 8 car. I think a really strong lineup going into 2023, and you have to look at Junior Motorsports as the current favorites to be the champions next year. As for Josh Berry, I think Josh Berry absolutely be more of a championship threat next year than he's been this year. I think he could honestly win the championship next year because there's a lot of races where Josh Berry was up there in front where guys like Gibbs and Allmendinger and Gregson have won. Berry's in right there 2nd or 3rd position in some of those races, and I expect Josh Berry next year for him at a really good level with the team. I think Berry's going to win 4 or 5 races minimum next year and will make the championship 4. I predict we could see a Final 4 with just Junior Motorsports drivers, but there's going to be guys like Chandler Smith in this series next year. Hemrick's probably going to be more of a threat next year. I think Cog will improve their program. You're going to have other guys in there like Landon Castle probably be threats next year, and I think that the next year, the Xfinity Series, is going to be really in-depth. But I think this overall is a really strong and a really, really good move for the team going into 2023. And it's exciting to see that Berry's coming back at the team next year, and it's good to see a driver who's really come from nothing get to where he needs to be. I hope one day he does go cup racing if Junior Motorsports ever decides if they decide to go cup racing. I would love for Berry to be the main driver chosen, but I don't know if he will be the main driver that is chosen. That being said, though, exciting to see that Josh Berry will be back with Junior Motorsports in 2023. Very exciting for sure. I'm glad to see he's getting another opportunity. He deserves this opportunity to return to the team. I think he'll be with Junior Motorsports the rest of his career, regardless whether it's for Cup. If they ever decide to go to Cup, he'll probably be with Junior Motorsports the rest of his career. And he's a really good driver, and exciting to see that Berry will be returning to Junior Motorsports next year because he deserves this opportunity and deserves this chance, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump onto the first of 2 major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Spire Motorsports. As it was announced yesterday that Spire Motorsports has officially revealed their 2023 crew chief and driver lineup for 2023 as well. So let's start by talking about the drivers that will be driving for Spire Motorsports next year. Corey LaJoie, no shock and surprise here, will be back in the 7-car next season. Corey LaJoie has been really good solid this year with Spire Motorsports this year. There's been a few times where he's been able to contend for victories. You go back to Daytona earlier this year where he was pretty fast. Atlanta was up there contending, led a lot of laps and nearly won the race, but a bad block cost him an opportunity to win that one. It has been really fast with Spire at points this year, and I've seen him contend for top 15s and even top 10s at points this year, so it's not a surprise he's returning to the 7. Joining the team in 2023 will be the former driver of the 42 car for Petty GMS Motorsports, Ty Dillon will be driving the 77 on a full-time basis heading into 2023. Now, Ty Dillon joining Spire Motorsports is probably going to be controversial for some people because let's be honest about Ty Dillon. I am not expecting Ty Dillon to set the world on fire with Spire Motorsports next year. You compare him this year to Eric Jones. Eric Jones has won a race and has been very solid and a really good contender this year with Petty GMS and with, I think, the 10th best average finish of anybody in the field this year. Ty Dillon is basically barely inside the top 30 in points, as only, I think, 2 top 10s in all of 2022. So he's not probably going to set the world on fire going into 2023. I'm not really expecting much from Ty Dillon going into next year. Let's talk about the crew chiefs and the competition director. So Ryan Sparks will be returning to work as a crew chief for Corey LaJoie next year, and also will be doing a joint role because he is going to be the competition director for Corey LaJoie heading into 2023. And also, Kevin Bellicourt, who's been the crew chief for the 77 car, will be the crew chief for Ty Dillon as well next season. Now, one thing that was asked around was about the Truck Series program. Toby Chrissy asked about the program for trucks, and the plan for the truck program currently at the moment is that they would love for that to eventually go full-time, but right now the plan is for that to be a part-time organization next season. I would presume that there's a good chance Raja could get an opportunity to drive that car. Maybe they do the same thing where they bring a bunch of Hendrick drivers to drive a 7. I really don't know, but that could be a very possible option heading into 2023 as well. In my opinion, when it comes to Spire, I think this is a really good move for them to have 2 full-time drivers instead of having one that's full-time and the other be multiple drivers. I think having focus on 2 drivers makes a lot of sense. Now, Ty Dillon and Corey LaJoie feel like they both can win next year. That's a little bit high. I don't know if they're going to be contenders to win next year with Spire Motorsports, except probably on super speedway tracks. But when I look at this overall move, in my opinion, for Spire, I know Ty Dillon probably isn't the greatest driver in the world. And Ty said he had opportunities to race in other series with competitive equipment, but he wanted to stay in Cup. And I think it makes sense for Spire to do what they're doing right here, to have 2 full-time drivers heading into next season. Again, I'm not expecting Spire Motorsports to set the world on fire going into 2023. I think LaJoie is still going to be overall a better driver than Ty Dillon, and that's no disrespect to Ty Dillon. I think that LaJoie will get more top 10s next year, and I think LaJoie will be more of a contender near the front, and I think he'll be contending for top 25 in points. As for Ty Dillon, I think Ty Dillon will be a top 30 contender in the points, and I think Ty Dillon will get a top 10 or 2 next year, but he's probably not going to set the world on fire. I expect LaJoie still to be the better driver going into 2023, but I do think the team will be overall a better organization as well. Look, I know Spire Motorsports has been looked at past as a joke, but they have shown at times flashes of brilliance. You look at Spire Motorsports this year, they have shown a little bit more improvement, and they've shown a little bit more speed as well. So this is a solid move, in my opinion. It's not the greatest move to bring Ty Dillon in because, again, let's be honest about Ty Dillon. He has performed to really great levels throughout his career in NASCAR's top 3 divisions. But I think Ty Dillon getting another opportunity to race full-time, it makes sense for him. I think he deserves another chance. But at some point, if Ty Dillon doesn't step up to the next levels and start performing at a much better rate, he's probably eventually going to be out of the Cup Series completely and probably will be in the Xfinity Series full-time at some point as well. So overall, in my opinion, when it comes to situation, I think this is a very solid move for Spire Motorsports to bring both these guys in, but hopefully we'll see improvement from Spire Motorsports heading into 2023, but I'm not sure how to genuinely feel about this, and this will be the 2023 lineup for Spire Motorsports in 2023. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the final major story in today's episode, as we're going to talk more about the Bubba Wallace suspension. We already kind of covered this on the channel yesterday, but it was announced yesterday that Bubba Wallace will not be racing this upcoming weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway, as he has been suspended by NASCAR. The reason Bubba Wallace was suspended by NASCAR is for his actions that happened at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. On lap 95 or lap 96 of the NASCAR Cup Series race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, Kyle Larson sent a 3-wide going into turn number 3, a very kind of bold and kind of dumb move at the same time, and Bubba Wallace got into the outside wall due to basically being forced up there. Bubba Wallace, in retaliation, getting angry and upset, went to the left and right rear Kyle Larson down the straightaway, as Larson then collected his basically Bubba Wallace's Toyota teammate, Christopher Bell, basically taking out a guy contending for the Owners' Championship and taking out a guy who's contending for the championship in the NASCAR Cup Series still, who could still obviously win the championship. After the incident happened, Bubba Wallace went over to basically confront Kyle Larson about what happened, and there was a little bit of shoving that happened for Bubba Wallace. Wallace. In his interview after Bubba Wallace showed showed no remorse for what he basically did to Kyle Larson, and basically he got mad and basically said playoffs and all that kind of stuff. Now, Bubba Wallace did release an apology a day before this penalty did come out. He released an apology. He didn't directly apologize to Kyle Larson for that matter, but he did apologize to NASCAR. He apologized to Christopher Bell. He apologized to Joe Gibbs Racing, and he also apologized to everyone else except Kyle Larson. Now, I wouldn't be shocked if he spoke to Kyle Larson in private on this situation, but he did not publicly apologize to Kyle Larson. So NASCAR did suspend Bubba Wallace. Now, the big question a lot of people had was 23XI going to appeal these penalties? No, they are not going to appeal the penalties as they understand NASCAR's position in this situation, and they will not suspend him. Now, one thing to know and remember is that Bubba Wallace did not get a fine or a points penalty. It is just a one-race suspension. So who will take over for the 45 car heading into this weekend? Well, John Hunter Nemechek is going to drive the 45 this weekend. This will be the first time that John Hunter Nemechek has competed for 23XI Racing ever full-time basis. Not a full-time, but basically first time he's competed for 23XI, and also the first time he has had a Cup start since 2020. Last time he raced in Cup was 2020. Has not made a Cup start in the last 2 years. John Hunter is a great replacement, in my opinion. He's a very solid driver, and I think it'll be a good foundation for 23XI Racing in this upcoming race. Now, I gave my take on the situation yesterday, and I'll give more of my take. I think what happened outside of what happened with the retaliation, where he basically shoved Larson and all that stuff, I think that's fair that they did not penalize him for that. The penalty and the retaliation is absolutely justified in my opinion, and right rearing somebody down the straightaway is completely unacceptable. So I think this is the right call. Now, why is this the right call? There's two big reasons. Number one, right rearing somebody down the straightaway is completely unacceptable in my opinion, especially at the pace and speed that they're going. They were going 170 and 180 miles an hour down the straightaway. If Kyle Larson does not clip Christopher Bell, that could have been extremely dangerous where he hits basically the outside wall, basically driver's side. That could have been really dangerous and could have hurt Kyle Larson in a really bad way. Another big reason why I think this penalty is justified for Bubba Wallace is because of the fact of the rears of these cars. We've talked about this all year. These next-gen cars are not as safe as the previous generations of cars. If Kyle Larson hits the rear of that car, that could result in the end of Kyle Larson's career. That's not a joke either. We've seen drivers' careers affected. Kurt Busch, who's Bubba Wallace's teammate this year, Kurt Busch drives for 23XI Racing. Basically, think about that too. Kurt Busch announced retirement the same week this happened. That is a really dangerous thing that Bubba Wallace basically ended up doing. And Larson hits that rear. That could result in concussion. And his teammate as well is currently out, Alex Bowman, because of concussion-like symptoms. That could have been extremely dangerous. Bubba Wallace basically bumps him down the straightaway going in the corner. They don't see a penalty coming, but right rearing somebody down the straightaway is completely unacceptable. Now, has this been the precedent in the past? No, we've seen many, many times where drivers have been right rear down the straightaway, and they haven't been penalized for it, including this year for Carson Hocevar, who right reared, I believe it was Colby Howard, down the straightaway, and Colby basically got right reared into the outside wall. That probably should have been suspension, and Noah Gragson also probably should have been suspended for his actions at Road America. My hope and prayer going forward when it comes is this has to be the precedent going forward. Does not matter the speed in the car. If you right rear somebody down the straightaway, you absolutely should be penalized and you should be suspended for one race. I don't think a points penalty should be basically suspended, but I think there's a difference between what Bubba Wallace did in a sense and what the other drivers did because of the pace and speed. This has to be the genuine precedent going forward for NASCAR, and I hope that this is the precedent going forward in the future. I don't want just one driver to be suspended. Now, will NASCAR keep this precedent long term? I don't know if they're going to continue to keep this precedent. It wouldn't surprise me or shock me if NASCAR is inconsistent in other situations going forward. But in my opinion, I think NASCAR got this call right. I think it's extremely dangerous. I have not been a fan of right rearing somebody down the straightaway, and it doesn't matter what driver it is. And if Kyle Larson had done the same thing to Bubba Wallace, you know there would have been more outrage because of it. But Kyle Larson should have gotten a penalty if he did the same thing to Bubba. I think the penalty is fair and justified in my opinion, and I think NASCAR absolutely got this call right. In my opinion, NASCAR made the right call right here, and I think it's a very justified act that NASCAR penalized Bubba Wallace and suspended him for one race. Now, Bubba Wallace will be back next week at Martinsville, so he's going to be back in a week from now, and he'll be back in Martinsville to be a contender. So I think it's absolutely a justified call and the right call, in my honest opinion. So, that is your today's Law NASCAR in Motorsports video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Links are just below over that. And combo your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts about NASCAR suspending Bubba Wallace? Do you think it's a justified call or not? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Spire Motorsports' 2023 driver lineup? Are you excited about that driver lineup or not? Let me know in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel, I'm not sure what's going to be coming out. More than likely will be the 10 drivers who should be racing in the Indy, who should race the Indy 500 in the not-so-distant future. Friday will be another NASCAR news and motorsports video. Saturday will be the NASCAR Xfinity or Truck Series race views. Could be a doubleheader video that day. And then Sunday will be the Cup Series race view from Homestead, followed by a news video on Monday, and a lot of other content coming on the channel as well. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.